Great to be with everyone. You're a very beautiful group, I must say. I was looking at all the photos there. I'm doing a lot of Zoom lately. You're a good looking group of people. So hope you're having a great day. I know there's a lot of challenges in people's lives this year. We're going to talk about some of that. I think there's a lot of opportunities in people's lives as well. And we're going to talk about that as well. I work with an amazing group of people in North Palm Beach at Floyd Consulting. And our philosophy at Floyd is that your organization can only become the best version of itself to the extent that the people in your organization are becoming better versions of themselves. And so the essence of that concept is that every time I become a better version of myself, every time you become a better version of yourself, everybody in your life benefits from that. Everybody in your personal life and everybody in your professional life benefits from that. And every time you become a better version of yourself, your organization becomes a better version of itself. And, I do a lot of speaking with a lot of organizations, and I'm always impressed by one thing among the leadership when they ask me to come and speak, and that is, they say, we really want this to be a gift to our people. We really want this to be for our people, to help them, to grow them, to inspire them. And, I heard that loud and clear from your leadership. And I just get so excited when I come to have the opportunity to speak in an organization that has that vision at the top. And so, yes, we're going to talk about some things today that impact your business, but we're also going to talk about many things that impact your life. And one of the things that we have discovered in our training, in our coaching, is that if we can teach people ideas that impact both their life and their business, those ideas are most impactful and those ideas are most absorbed. And so almost everything I speak to you today about can be applied to both your business and your personal life. Okay, I'm not always going to translate it into both worlds. I might speak about some ideas in relation to the business world and some ideas in relation to your personal life. You're smart enough to translate ideas back and forth and know what one idea might mean to your personal life or another idea might mean to your business life. But I want to give you that context before we get started. The idea that I really want to implant into your hearts, mind, body, souls today is the single idea, and that is everything great in history has been built by people who believe that the future could be bigger and better, okay? Everything great in history has been built by people who believed that the future could be bigger and better. This is a critical idea in history, okay? A critical idea in our lives, a critical idea in our businesses, but this is a critical idea in history. And one of the things that we've seen during 2020 here in the United States is that this idea has been threatened. This idea has been put on the back burner because of COVID, because of the pandemic, okay? And so because of COVID, because of the pandemic, we go into a survival mode. We go into, well, first we went into a crisis mode, then we went into survival mode. And I think only now are people really learning how to thrive in the midst of these circumstances. And that's on a day-by-day basis. Some days we feel like we're still just surviving. Some days we feel like we're learning how to thrive in the midst of the new environment. But other days we feel like we're back in crisis mode. And that's natural in a transition. And we're going to talk a little bit about transitions later. But the reality is that, at the end of March, if you said to people, 2020 is going to be the best year of your life, people would have laughed at you, okay? And here we are in November, there's probably not that many people who are looking back at 2020 and saying, outstanding year, best year of my life, best year of everything, okay? It's important that we face the brutal facts. That's the reality. But it's also important that we don't turn in on ourselves, because when we turn in on ourselves, we stop looking out to the future. We stop imagining and envisioning a bigger, better future. Human beings have incredible abilities, and we're just gifted in so many ways. Firstly, life is a gift. It's extraordinary. But then, free will is an incredible gift. The ability to choose. Yes, I'll do this. No, I won't do that. It's an incredible ability. And we talk a lot about the gift of life. We talk a lot about the gift of free will. But I think third on the ability list for human beings, we almost never talk about is the ability to dream. It's the ability to look into the future and to imagine something bigger and better in the future, and then come back into the present and work in the present to bring about that future, that bigger, better future. That is an astounding ability. It's an extraordinary ability. And it is one that lies unemployed very often in most of our lives. We don't access it that often. And so what happens during a situation like the pandemic, we turn in on the moment and we stop envisioning the future. Okay, that is important in a crisis. That is necessary in a crisis. That is right behavior in a crisis. You have to turn to the moment. You have to deal with the crisis, but you can't stay inward focused on that moment. Once the crisis is managed, and obviously we manage it over a period of time, we then have to cast our vision back into the future. And so one of the things I want you to think about today is, what's it going to take to make 2021 the best year of your life and the best year of your business? Okay. What is it going to take to make 2021 the best year of your life and the best year of your business? There's some things that I know for certain, and that will not happen without intentionality. Okay. That absolutely will not happen unless we say to ourselves, okay, let's think about it. What would it take for 2021 to be the best year of my life? What would it take for 2021 to be the best year of my business? Okay, we have to bring intentionality to it. And of course, we have to dream. We have to envision a bigger, better future. And we have to dream about that bigger, better future. And that can be hard, particularly in current circumstances. We don't have to go off and, okay, I want to plan and dream the next 10 years, but to start to dream again about, what does next year look like? Or even just Christmas, New Year's. What does that holiday period look like for you this year in new circumstances? What are your dreams around that? Maybe there's still limitations placed on those dreams, but what are your dreams around that? When we start to look to the future, our lives become injected with hope. We start to look to the future in this way. We start to dream about the future. Our lives become injected with hope. And I think one of the things that is sorely missing in so many, many people's lives this year is hope. I think there is a hope deficit out there. And how do we inject that hope? We inject that hope by dreaming ourselves about a bigger, better future, and about encouraging our family and friends to dream. I wouldn't recommend going home tonight and walking through the front door and saying to your spouse or partner, hey, honey, what are your dreams? You might get a very interesting reaction to that. You might need to tiptoe into those waters a little bit more subtly. But the reality is most people have never been asked what their dreams are. Most people have never had someone sit down and tell me what your dreams are. And that's sad and tragic on many, many different levels. So no, don't walk through the front door and scream at the top of your lungs, hey, honey, what are your dreams tonight? But do start that conversation sometime in the next few days. Start that conversation with the significant people in your life, both at work and at home. And you'd be amazed the reactions you get. Firstly, a lot of people say, oh, I don't know, I haven't thought about it for a while. Other people will say, oh, I want to travel, or I want to, update my kitchen, or I want to clean out my garage, or all sorts of different things you'll hear from people. And many people will not have an answer. And that's okay. And definitely not to judge that and not to make that person feel uncomfortable about that, because the reality is we all stop dreaming at different times in our lives. And if the person doesn't have an answer, just to encourage them to think about it. The beautiful thing about the question, like, what are your dreams? Or tell me about some of your dreams, is that that question lives and breathes and moves with people days after you ask the question. You know, if you ask somebody what their dreams are today, we're having this conversation. You are going to think about your dreams here in the next few days, in the next few weeks. You are going to some days love me and some days curse me for bringing up the whole topic of dreams. You're going to say that crazy Australian Matthew Kelly got me thinking about these dreams. Now I can't stop thinking about these dreams. Everyone's talking about these dreams. There are going to be days like that. And that's good, because what it means, it stirs our souls, it stirs our whole being, it stirs us in a very, very deep place. And that's powerful. Now, interestingly, there's a very, very significant connection between this and your business. Okay. If you ask yourself, okay, what business are you in? Okay, just get your answer in your head. What business are you in? What are you in the business of? Probably come up with a lot of different answers across the organization. But the reality is, you're in the business of dreams. You are in the business of dreams. People, your clients come to you because they have dreams for themselves and dreams for their families, and you help them accomplish their dreams, you know, and that's a very, very powerful thing. I also think it's a very powerful way for you to differentiate yourself, you know, from your competitors. You know, usually when I go to the bank, it's like free checking, or you want this or that. But nobody ever asks me, you know, what dream are you working towards? But the reality is, no point in having money if you don't have dreams. Okay. The only reason to have money is to put it towards dreams that we have for ourselves or for other people, you know, that we love and care about. And so there's an enormous connection between this concept of dreaming in our personal life and helping and encouraging other people to dream in our personal life and in our professional life. And it's amazing how one question can change a whole relationship. You know, it's amazing how if you ask a client, what's your dream? What dream are you working towards this year? Or what dream are you working towards next year? You have a completely different conversation with that customer, with that client. And I see this in every industry. You know, I was with some architects last week and we were talking about, okay, well, the first thing when you sit down with somebody who, you know, wants to design and build a home, the first thing you ask them, what are your dreams for this home? And let's make a list of all your dreams for this home. And then let's work out how many we can accomplish, you know, within whatever the limitations are. And so sometimes when we're in an industry where there is a lot of other options, there are a lot of other competitors, there are, your services can sometimes be seen as sort of commodities that aren't different from one place to another. We have to work out, how do we differentiate you from everyone else? And one very powerful way to differentiate you from everybody else is to change the conversation. Okay, to change the conversation. And we change the conversation by talking about one of the most powerful things in people's lives, and that is their dreams. That is their dreams. How does it apply in our personal life? So many ways. How does it apply in our business life? So many ways, you know. But changing the conversation can change a whole relationship in business. It can change a whole relationship personally. I mean, a couple that sits down and says, okay, let's make a list of some of our dreams and let's talk about our dreams. What's going to happen? That couple is automatically going to envision a bigger, better future. It's impossible for them not to. For each person to sit down, put down some of their dreams, then come together, talk about their dreams, they're guaranteed to have a bigger, better future because they're going to envision that bigger, better future. You know, single people, you know, you go out, you meet people, the conversation is always the same, right? You know, when was the last time single people, you're on a date and the other person asked me, well, tell me about some of your dreams for your future, or tell me about your vision for your life, right? That's a completely different conversation, and it completely differentiates a person and an experience really just with one question. And so I think it's important that we understand that we can change the conversation in business with our clients. We can change the conversation in our personal lives with all sorts of people. And sometimes it only takes one idea and one question. And that one idea and one question we're talking about today in this first section is, what are your dreams? What are your dreams? And so as we come toward the end of the year, I really want to encourage you to spend some time thinking about what your dreams are for yourself, what your dreams are for your business in the coming year. You know, this time of year, I spend a couple of hours every Sunday afternoon just looking back on the year that's been and just thinking about the year that's coming, both for the business and for my personal life. You know, I am living at the moment in Cincinnati. Usually I'll be at this time of year, I'd be down there in South Florida. I have 5 little kids under the age of 10. So it's pretty intense here. If you thought the COVID lockdown was intense, I have a whole different version of that to share with you, but not today. So being in lockdown with 5 kids under the age of 10 was, it was magical at some times. And at some times it was, you know, you want to pull your hair out. I think I know every lesson that Daniel Tiger has ever taught. I think I might write a book about Daniel Tiger's lessons and how they apply to almost every aspect of life. So I've learned many new things during the year of COVID. But as I sit here and it's November, you know, I can't say this has been the best year of my life. And there haven't been that many years in my life where I would say that. You know, I've had a good run. But I got to say, the last 2 or 3 years have been pretty rough on lots of different fronts. You know, my mum's in Australia. She's dying of cancer. They've got their borders closed. So I haven't been able to be there since January. You know, that's been difficult. She's been sick for, you know, well over a year now. I have 7 brothers in Australia. I grew up in a big family, 8 boys. It's the first time I've lived in the States for over 20 years, but it's the first time in 20 years I haven't been able to go back to my homeland, which is challenging. And I think a challenge a lot of people have experienced this year, not being able to see family and friends and that sort of thing. So I want to share some of these personal things with you because I want us to be aware that everybody's got stuff going on, you know? I think a lot of people, you know, would look at me and say, he's got his act together, you know, he's super successful, you know, he's written 30 books, have sold 40 million copies, you know, he's got these several businesses and life must be good. And life is good. But even when life is good, everybody's got their stuff, you know. Everyone we encounter every day is carrying some type of burden. And if we're going to work together, if we're going to live together, if we're going to relate, if we're going to be on teams and in community and in organizations, I think we have to be mindful that every single person we encounter every day is carrying some type of burden. And when we operate from that mindset, we're just gentler with each other. You know, we just tend to be gentler with each other. And we can be very harsh with each other at times. We can be short with each other at times. And, you know, we can shoot off an email and the tone of the email can be angry or short or dismissive or critical or whatever. But if we're mindful that every person we encounter every day is carrying a heavy burden, we tend to be a little more emotionally intelligent. We tend to be a little gentler with each other. And of course, that causes relationships to thrive. People don't walk around with signs around their neck that say what their burden is. You know, people don't walk around with a sign around their neck that says, I just got diagnosed with cancer. People don't walk around with a sign around their neck that says, my husband just left me. People don't walk around with a sign around their neck that says, my child is at home sick. People don't walk around with a sign around their neck that says any of the things that we're carrying. And we're all carrying something. Everyone we meet every day is carrying a burden, even the people who feel it looks like they've got it together and they've got it made and everything must be good for, it's not true. And so as we approach each other, just to be, you know, emotionally intelligent, just to be mindful that, you know, people are carrying burdens, and that those burdens can have a huge impact on the way they live their lives, you know, on the way they're able to participate at work sometimes. And they might seem distracted. They probably are, you know, because something big is going on in their lives. When I go out to visit organizations, I love to do a little exercise. I call it a dream session. And it works better if we're in person. And I just want to do a sort of a mini dream session with you here for a few minutes today, sort of to get our juices flowing, to get our dream muscles activated. I want to take you through a handful of questions. If you've got pen and paper, jot down your answers. If you don't have pen and paper, you can store them in your photographic memory, store your answers in your photographic memory, type them down, jot them down later. The reason that a dream session is important, the purpose that a dream session serves, is to draw us out of our little world. We all get caught up in our own little worlds from time to time. And what happens when we do that is we lose sight of what's possible. We lose sight of what's possible. And when we lose sight of what's possible, our dream muscles do begin to atrophy. They do begin to die. To be successful in life and in business, you have to be good at many things, but there is one skill you have to have. It's indispensable in all types of success, and that is the ability to allocate scarce resources. Okay, if you want to be successful at anything, you have to be able to allocate scarce resources. That's time, energy, money, all these sorts of things. Business leaders, they often don't think about it, but business leaders, they're responsible for allocating scarce resources. We can only hire so many people. We can only pay people a certain amount. You know, we can only buy so many resources. We can only have so many locations. So business leaders are constantly allocating scarce resources, and we see it there fairly clearly. The truth is, you and I, in our personal lives, we're constantly allocating scarce resources as well. We only have so much time. We only have so much money. We only have so much energy. We only have so much affection. We only have so much capacity for intimate relationships. There are limitations placed on us, okay? But we can get too caught up in the allocation of scarce resources, and we can get caught up in the scarcity that comes along with that. So it is a skill, but most skills have a dark side. And the dark side of this skill is that we can get into sort of scarcity mentality and scarcity thinking, okay? The exercise we're about to do is designed to get us out of that. There's another exercise I do sometimes with usually executive teams. We do like executive retreats or executive offsites. We'll divide the team into two groups, you know, handful of people on each team. We'll put them in different rooms. We give them exactly the same problem to solve, okay, in their business. We give them a problem to solve in their business. We will tell one group, you have to solve this problem for less than $100,000, okay? We will tell the other group they have to solve the problem, but there's an unlimited budget, okay? So you've got these two groups. You give them the same problem, but you tell this group, have to solve it for less than $100,000. You tell this group, they've just got to solve it. It doesn't matter how much it costs. They've just got to solve it. Okay. The second group will come up with 5 times more ideas. Okay. 5 times more ideas. And more than 95% of their ideas will cost less than $100,000. Okay. It's fascinating how it plays out. It plays out every time. But because for the first group, the first thing we did was we limited them. We said, you got to solve this problem and you got to solve it for less than $100,000. The first thing we did was limit them. And so they automatically went into a limited type of thinking. Okay. We do that all the time in our lives. We do it to survive and we do it to be successful. What we have to learn to take our success in our life to the next level, we have to learn sometimes to cast that thinking aside. Not permanently, but to cast that thinking aside sometimes and to think about our lives in new ways, in fresh ways, so that we can see sort of the amazing possibilities that we don't see when we are bogged down in our limited thinking. So the first thing I want to do is ask you 3 questions that are designed to just get us going, get us out of this sort of limited thinking. The first question is, if you woke up tomorrow morning to a phone call from an attorney, you don't have to write the questions down. The questions are quite long, sort of like little stories. But if you woke up tomorrow morning to a phone call from an attorney who you never heard of, who tells you about a relative you didn't even know, and the relative has died and left you $1 billion with a B. $1 billion. So I think for most of us enough that we would never have to worry about money ever again. If you inherited $1 billion tomorrow, what would you do with the rest of your life? And what would you do with the money? Just jot down an answer. Don't judge your answer. Don't overthink your answer. Don't edit your answer. Just jot it down. If you woke up tomorrow morning and inherited $1 billion, what would you do with the rest of your life, and what would you do with your money? What would you do with the money? All right. Question number 2. You go to the doctor tomorrow. You go to the doctor tomorrow and you're feeling fine. You just go for a checkup and the doctor does some tests. And the doctor comes back and says, I got some good news and I've got some bad news. You say, well, give me the bad news first, doctor. She says, no, I'm going to give you the good news first. You say, all right, doc, what's the good news? She says, the good news is that you are going to feel perfectly healthy until the moment you die. You say, okay, well, what does that mean? She said, well, you're not going to get a disease and just, slowly degenerate and get really sick and that sort of, just one day you're just going to die in your sleep. You're going to feel perfectly healthy until the moment you die. Okay, well, that's the good news, doc. What's the bad news? She says the bad news is you are going to die 5 years from today. Okay? You are going to die 5 years from today. If you knew you were going to die 5 years from today, what would you make sure you got done in the next 5 years? If you knew you were going to die 5 years from today, what would you make sure you got done in the next 5 years? What would you make a priority in the next 5 years? Take a minute. I know it's a little bit difficult on the technology, but take a minute, jot down your answer. See, we've got people typing into the chat. Type into the chat if you want. Do you have the $1 billion? No, You don't have the $1 billion anymore. I see that question just came through. Sorry about that. Juliana is amused. Yeah, that was a good question. I usually tell people that, so that's my bad. All right, so moving on to the next question. Question number 3 sounds a lot like question number 2, but it's different. You go to the doctor tomorrow, you're feeling perfectly healthy. Doctor does some tests, come back. She says, I've got some good news and some bad news. You say, all right, give me the good news first. You say, all right. She says, all right, the good news is you're going to feel perfectly healthy until the moment you die. You say, all right, well, what's the bad news? She says, the bad news is you are going to die 60 seconds from now, and there's nothing we can do about it. If you died right now, okay, is essentially the question. If you died right now, what is it that you would never get to do that is important to you? Okay, what is it that you would never get to do that would be heartbreaking that you never get to do it? You know, so for example, I never get to see my kids grow up. I never get to walk my daughter down the aisle. I never get to meet my grandkids. I never get to meet the people my kids choose to spend their lives with. Those types of things. What are the things that you would never get to do? What are the things that you would never get to do if you died right now? And of course, what are we doing? We're really looking at a very similar question. What are we doing? We're just changing the time frame to stimulate different parts of our hearts and our minds, to stimulate our dreams and our visions for our lives in different ways. And in some ways, the questions don't matter that much. In some ways, the answers don't matter that much. What matters most is that we learn this new way of thinking, that we learn to think in ways that take the shackles of, you know, limited resources off us, so that we can see new possibilities. We can see what's important to us in different ways. I've done this exercise. I've done these 3 questions with hundreds of groups, you know, and I will go around then and I'll ask some people, okay, what did you have for each question? I think an important thing to realize is that people almost never mention work. People almost never mention work in response to any of the 3 questions, okay? And it's important for us to realize that, okay? It's important for us to realize that's not a bad thing, you know? That's not a bad thing. Why? Well, work has a place in our lives. Work has a place in our lives. And if we ask ourselves, why do people come to work for your organization? Okay, it's a question into a very simple answer. Why do people come to work for your organization? What is the primary reason? That's what we're looking for. There are many reasons. What is the primary reason? Okay. Do they come to work for your organization because they love the work? No, that's not the primary reason. You might love your work, okay? You might love your work, and if you do, I am immensely happy for you, okay? You might not. You might some days love your work and some days not love your work. There may be many days when you don't love your work. That's okay. You know, that is okay. We have to be honest about that, and we have to realize that is okay. But what we have to realize, the primary reason people come to work for your organization or any other organization is not because they love the work. That's not the primary reason. The primary reason is not because they love your business. You may love that business. If you do, great, I'm happy for you. That's not the primary reason, and that's okay. And the primary reason people come to work is not because they love having you as their boss. If you are the boss or one of the managers or one of the leaders, I'm sorry if that's a shocking surprise to you as a leader. We can arrange some therapy for you to deal with that. But the primary reason people come to work is not because they love having you as their boss. Okay. And I know that's true for me. And I know that's true in my business and in your business and in every other business. And so it begs the question, what is the primary reason people come to work for your business? And the answer is because they have dreams for themselves and dreams for their families. And they believe that by hitching their wagon to your business, that those dreams that they have for themselves and their families will be furthered in some way, not completely accomplished, with the wave of a wand, but they believe that by hitching their wagon to your business, their dreams will be fulfilled, or they will take steps towards fulfilling the dreams they have for themselves and for their families. How do I know that's true? Well, that's true for me. I own the business. I own my business, but if that stopped being true, what would happen? I would disengage at best. At worst, I would stop showing up to work or close down the business or something. And so what we realize is that this is just something universally true. When this relationship between employee and employer, when we're not helping each other fulfill our dreams, what happens is people disengage. That's natural. That's normal. If your business is very lucky, when that happens and someone begins to disengage, they'll just leave and leave very quickly. But usually that is not what happens. Usually what happens is there's a process of disengagement. And people disengage, and then they get negative, and then they get critical, and then they get skeptical, and then they get cynical. And there's this whole process that people go through when they disengage. And then when it finally becomes so bad that they can't stand it and you can't stand it, or either you tell them that they need to go and find somewhere else to work, or they finally start looking for someone else to work. But it might take them 6 months to find somewhere else to work. So in the meantime, they're making life miserable for all the people they work with and all the people they serve. And they're miserable at home as well, because that whole thing, they're just disengaging. When we're disengaging in any aspect of life, we end up miserable, and we end up making other people miserable. And that is true, as I've just described, in business, but it's also true in our personal lives. If you know someone who's in a relationship and they're sort of disengaged in the relationship, or they're disengaging from the relationship, they're not happy. During that period where they're disengaging, they're not happy, and they're making you unhappy. Probably your friend, if you're that person's friend, you're having to listen to all this all the time. It's miserable to listen to. The other person in the relationship's not happy because they know somebody's disengaging from the relationship. And so we have to keep an eye on engagement and disengagement in our lives, because it breeds misery, not only for ourselves, but for everybody around us, personally and professionally. What drives engagement? A strong vision for the future. That's true for business. It's true for an individual. It's true in a marriage. It's true in a family. It's true in a school. It's true on a sporting team. It's true wherever you gather people together. What drives engagement is a strong vision for the future. So we're back to dreams. We're back to envisioning a bigger future, a better future, and laying that vision before people, and then coming back into the present and working hard to bring about that bigger future. What leads to disengagement? Well, what do we say at the beginning? Everything great in history has been built by people who believe the future could be bigger and better than the past. Disengagement, what happens to disengage people? They stop believing the future can be bigger and better than the past. If you're in a relationship and you stop believing that the future can be bigger or better than the past, you're going to disengage from that relationship. You may stay in the relationship. What do we call that? We call that quit and stay. We see that at work all the time, right? People quit, but they stay. They quit, but they won't leave. And so we have to realize we do that in many aspects of our lives. People quit on their personal finances. People quit on their health and well-being. People quit in relationships. People quit and stay at work. What is that? That's disengagement. What drives it? It's a belief that the future cannot be bigger than the past. And so one of our roles as leaders, and I say our roles because every single person, you know, on this session today is a leader in some way, in some shape, in some form, personally and professionally. Usually many, many ways we play a role as a leader. So if what causes people to disengage is the belief that the future can't be bigger and better than the past, our job as leaders, okay, and you might be leading a team, you might be leading a location, you might be mom or dad at home and leading the family. You might be mom or dad leading the soccer team, whatever. Our role as leaders, our fundamental role as leaders, is to convince and encourage people that the future can be bigger than the past and better than the past. Now, it is not our role as leaders to ensure that. It's not our role as leaders to guarantee that. It's not our role as parents, as friends, as spouses, as partners, as managers, as CEOs, as anything, to promise people a bigger, better future independent of their own effort. Okay. So our role as leaders is to lay before people the possibility that the future can be bigger and better than the past. But then people, they need to work in the present to bring about that future reality. That's true for a soccer team of 10-year-olds. And it's true for a group of corporate people working on a project or a new initiative or the core business or whatever. But we all have that role as leaders. How does it play out? It plays out in hundreds of ways. I mean, even in a break room. I know we've got the COVID thing going on, but even in a break room, right? What energy do you bring into the break room? Do you bring a positive energy into those conversations? Do you bring a negative energy into those conversations? What's your brand? You know, you have a brand as a business, but everyone in the business has a personal brand. You know, some people's personal brand is, oh, that person's always cynical. It doesn't matter, you know, how good something is, that person's always cynical about it. Other people, what's their brand? Oh, that person's always late to work. Okay. Now, the person might be the best worker in the place. But if that person consistently comes late to work, the fact that that person is always late to work overshadows all of that person's good work, because that person's brand becomes that person's always late to work. Other people's brand is that person will always help. You know, if I get overwhelmed, if there's a problem, if there's a situation, I know I can always turn to that person, and that person is always willing to help. That person, the most helpful person in this organization. Other people are like, oh, that person's always encouraging people, you know, and that's their brand. What is your brand? You know, if I ask 10, 15 people who know you at work, what is the one thing that you think about when you think of this person? How would they describe your brand? And that's interesting. What's more important is, what do you want your brand to be? Okay, what do you want your brand to be? What do you want your brand to be at work? What do you want your brand to be at home? You know, what do you want your brand to be with your friends? What do you want your brand to be if you have kids? What do you want your brand to be with your kids? What do you want your brand to be with your spouse or your partner? You know, if someone asks your spouse or your partner to describe you, how do you want to be described? And do your words and actions lead to that natural description? Do your words and actions make it impossible for your spouse or your partner to describe you as anything other than that brand? We spend millions and millions of dollars on corporate branding. We spend millions and millions of dollars. We spend thousands of hours with all types of professionals and focus groups, all types of stuff. And the lesson I want us to take from that is that we spend almost no time thinking about our personal brand. But you think about the concept, it applies so naturally in both aspects of our lives, personally and professionally. And as I said in the beginning, what I really want to encourage you to do is whatever it is we're talking about, and even beyond today, whenever you're talking about anything in the work life or in your personal life, begin to consider the cross-functionality of ideas. Begin to consider, okay, I learned this at work today. How can that make me a better dad or a better brother or a better boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, whatever? Or I learned this at home. How can that make me a better team member, a better leader, a better teammate? Because the application, the cross-application and cross-functionality of these ideas is significant and very, very powerful. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the concept of work-life balance, which has been incredibly popular in the corporate world for about 34 years. The concept was developed by a British sociologist in the 80s and very, very quickly became very, very powerful concept in the corporate world, especially in the United States. Interestingly, I don't actually believe in work-life balance, so I should confess that right at the beginning. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe that work-life balance is a myth. I believe that when we talk about work-life balance, we're talking about something we need, but it isn't, what we typically define as balance. As a litmus test of that, I asked myself, okay, what are the most satisfying times in my life? The most satisfying times in my life are times when I have worked 85, 90, 95 hours in a week to get a project done and felt really good about a project. Those times in my life have been incredibly satisfying. Now, every week can't be like that, but it is, I think it is good and healthy and just fabulous to have that experience from time to time. Those experiences have been incredibly satisfying for me. The other types of experiences that are very satisfying for me is when I lay on the beach for a week and I do absolutely nothing except drink little drinks with umbrellas in them. It's a different type of satisfaction, but it is an incredibly satisfying experience. I share these examples because there's no balance in either of them. Both of these experiences are extreme experiences, and both of these experiences do point to the height of satisfaction in my life. And I think if you go into your life and you examine the next few days, when have been the most satisfying times, I think you will discover that, that something similar is true for yourself. And so what is this work-life balance thing that we talk about all the time? Why does it matter? What do we really want? What are we hoping it will accomplish? I wrote a book about work-life balance. It's called Off Balance. Subtitle is Getting Beyond a Work-Life Balance Myth. The book came out of an experience I had in an enormous company. It's a Fortune 50 company here in the United States. I was working with the CEO and his executive team on their employee satisfaction survey. And we were talking about, work-life balance and the questions they had around work-life balance. And they knew I didn't love the concept. And one of them got pretty frustrated with me, and he said to me, hey, what is your problem? And I said, well, I have many problems, but I'm assuming that you want to know what my problem is with this work-life balance thing. I said, my problem with the work-life balance thing is that it separates work from life. And our work isn't separate from our life. We don't have our life here and then, oh, our work is over here. Our work is part of our life, and it's a significant part of our life, and we spend a lot of time working, you know. And so when we, just the concept itself is flawed. The idea of work-life balance is saying, okay, your life is here, your work is here, balance them out. We basically set people up to fail. It's sort of an impossible equation, impossible scenario. So I started doing some research, and in the research, one of the questions we asked was, if you had to choose between balance and satisfaction, which would you choose? We had 3,000 respondents in the Fortune 500 space take the survey. 3,000 respondents. Not a single person chose balance over satisfaction. And so what does that tell us? I think we have this mythical image of what balance is. But I think it's much more about satisfaction than it is about balance. We want this. This is what we want. This is what I broke it down to this one very simple belief. And I may be wrong, I may be right, I may be wrong for some people and right for other people. You get to decide that. With all of these ideas, you get to decide that. But what I believe we want when we talk about work-life balance, we want to have a deeply satisfying personal life, and we want to have a deeply satisfying professional life. Okay. And we want to know that both are possible at the same time. Okay. The world tells us, this is what the world says. The world says, if you want to have a deeply satisfying professional life, you have to sacrifice your personal life. And the world tells us, if you want to have a deeply satisfying personal life, you have to sacrifice your professional life, your career. And I simply don't accept those premises. Okay. I think what we want to have a deeply satisfying personal life. We want to have a deeply satisfying professional life. We want to know that both are possible at the same time. And I believe they are, but I don't believe it's about balance. I believe we have to switch our focus off of balance and onto satisfaction. So if you've got pen and paper, we'll do another little exercise, just take 30 seconds. Got pen and paper. Give yourself a score between 1 and 10 for your personal satisfaction this year. Okay, not this morning. You might have just had 6 espressos, you know, and you might be a little bit amped up, and it can affect your score. You might have got no sleep last night because you had a baby crying all night and you didn't get any sleep. So I don't want you to say how satisfied you are personally right now at this moment. I want you to look back, take the year or take 6 months, whatever period you want to look at, and say, okay, what has been your level of personal satisfaction this year? Give yourself a score between 1 and 10, 1 being horrible, 10 being blissfully, ecstatically, euphoric things. Nothing could get better. Then let's take a look at the professional life. Give yourself a score between 1 and 10 for professional satisfaction. 1 being horrible, 10 being euphoric. Don't overthink it. Just take a gut check. Not how you feel today, how you feel, let's say, this year. Just give yourself a score between 1 and 10. So I assume you've got your scores. Couple of things to look at. Which score is higher? Is your personal score higher or is your professional score higher? It's different for different people. It's different for different people at different times in their lives. What do I know about the exercise? I know that just by doing this exercise, which took about 45 seconds, you will think about this now. You will think about this. You will think about your personal satisfaction, and you will think about your professional satisfaction in the days and weeks and even months ahead. Why? Because we did something we do in business all the time, which is what? Measure something. Why do we measure so many things in business? Because it drives intentionality, it drives behavior, it drives focus, we start thinking about it. It reminds us that this thing matters, that this thing's important. What I find fascinating, I've been doing this work for almost 30 years. What I find fascinating is that most people don't measure anything in their life the way we measure everything in business. Okay? You think about how many things we measure in business. We measure everything in business. Most people don't measure anything in their life like that. Okay? So one of the things I want to challenge you in today, one of the things I want to encourage you and challenge you in today is to measure something in your life. Okay? Measure something. Now, it might be personal and professional satisfaction. And if it is, that's great. Okay? What do I want you to do? I want you to get a journal, or I want you to put a spreadsheet on your desktop. And every Thursday, it's Thursday, so let's just do Thursday. Every Thursday at the same time, 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whenever, I want you to give yourself a score, personally and professionally, for how satisfied you are. I don't want you to do it first thing Monday morning. I don't want you to do it last thing Friday afternoon. These times are times of transition into and out of our work weeks. And so they change the way we feel about both aspects of our lives. But Thursday afternoon is a pretty good time to do it. Give yourself a score between 1 and 10. And if you do that every week for the next 10 weeks, the next 20 weeks, the next 30 weeks, what are you going to notice? You're going to notice the same things we notice in everything we measure in the business. You're going to notice trends. Okay? You're going to notice trends. What kind of trends are you going to notice? For most people, you're going to notice an upward trend. Most people who start thinking about their personal and professional satisfaction cannot think about it without doing something about it. And so just by once a week saying, okay, how satisfied am I personally? How satisfied am I professionally? And writing down a number, most people, that's going to drive intentionality. They're going to do things differently in the next week to drive the score up. And the truth is, you don't need me or anybody else to sit here and tell you, oh, here are the 6 things you need to do to be more personally satisfied. You already know what those 6 things are. Okay? You already know what the things are that you can do professionally to have more satisfaction. What's the danger? The danger is to focus on the things we can't control. The danger is to focus on the thing, oh, my teammate does this, or my leader does that, or my customer did this. No, you have no control over those things. Okay? If you want to put your satisfaction in control of those other people, I would question the wisdom in that. I would question the common sense in that. That is a losing strategy. You know, that's like saying, I'm going to be happy on days when there's no traffic on the way to work. We have absolutely no control over that. Why would you give your happiness over to something that you have absolutely no control over? I'm going to be happy on days when it's sunny but not too hot. We have absolutely no control over that. And we do this all the time. We give our happiness, we give our satisfaction over to other people, other experiences that we have no control over whatsoever, rather than focusing in on the things that we can actually impact, that we can actually influence. Control, some things we can control, very few things we can control. We think we have a lot more control than we do, but there are many, many things we can influence. And so I just encourage you to measure something in your life, okay? Maybe it's something you're going to measure every day. You know, what's an example? What's a great one? Water consumption. Most of us are dehydrated. Most of us are tired because we're dehydrated. Most of us eat more food than we need because we're dehydrated. We're not hungry, we're thirsty. You know, most of us are dehydrated, we're thirsty. We need more water. You know, it's amazing how little water most of us drink. You want to measure something? Measure how much water you drink every day. What will happen? You will start drinking more water. Okay, what will happen as a result of that? You will go to the bathroom more. No, well, you will do that, but what will happen as a result of drinking more water? You'll be more alert. You'll have more energy. You will be more focused. You'll be more invigorated. So many things, just water. You know, we complicate so many things when the reality is there is genius in simplicity. There is genius in simplicity, and simply measuring something in your life, the way we measure everything in business, can literally change your life. And so if you do nothing else today, if you make no other commitment today, I really would encourage you to decide to measure something. You don't need to decide what to measure today. Take a couple of days, think about it, but decide that you're going to measure something either every day or every week, that you're going to write it down, that you're going to look at the trends. Because our lives change when our habits change. It's not freak luck. It's not freak luck. Our lives change when our habits change. And measurement is a habit that drives other habits. You know, and so it sets off a domino effect. That's why we do it in our business. That's why it's so successful in our business. And I just want to encourage you to bring that into your life. Because as you're doing that, I believe that whatever you choose to measure will drive more satisfaction, will drive more energy, will drive more engagement. And you will have the energy that you need to go out and do what we began speaking about today, which was to build a bigger, better future. To build a bigger, better future for yourself, a bigger, better future for your business. So it's been an honor to be with you today. I hope someday I can come and visit you in person. I want to encourage you. Is it a difficult time? Yes, it's a time of transition. Many things are changing, and that challenges us and sometimes makes us a little psychologically fragile. I think the key to success in transition, I think the key to success in change, I think the key to success when things are not going the way we like it is don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do. Okay, don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do. There are some things you can do. There are some things you can't do. Focus on the things you can do, however small they are. Focus on the things you can do. When we do that, what happens is that overwhelming state or that overwhelmed state begins to dissipate. You know, when we feel overwhelmed, whatever small action we can take tends to take that away in some way. And as that happens, we begin to find that hope again that I think has been sorely missing from many, many people's lives today. We've covered a lot of ideas today. We have recorded the session, and I know that they plan to make the session available to you in some way, shape, or form, so that you can revisit it, or people that have not had a chance to be with us today can do that. What I'd encourage you to do is, I see my role as sharing with you a lot of life-changing and business-changing ideas. Okay, not all of those ideas are for you today. You know, what's really important is for you to focus in on one or two and say, okay, I'm going to own those ones. You know, I'm going to own those ones. I'm going to focus on those ones. I'm going to make those ones mine. And then once you have done that, you can return to some of the other ideas. But we have covered a lot of ideas. I want to acknowledge that so that you can be mindful of that, because you can't go off and live all of the ideas we have just covered in the last 61 minutes. So thank you so much for having me. Hi, I'm Matthew Kelly. Thank you for watching. Every day we're releasing new videos and videos from the archives of the last 30 years. So click the button below and subscribe so that you can get notifications and be aware of all the great content that can have a powerful impact on your life.